Classroom management is a term educators use to detail processes that ensure lessons in the classroom run smoothly and without disruptive behavior from those who may compromise content delivery. In short, classroom management establishes and sustains an orderly environment for your students, creates opportunities for meaningful academic learning, and fosters social and emotional growth, reduces negative behaviors, and increases the amount of time actually devoted to the lesson. Welcome to episode 130 of the Teacher Rockstar podcast, a place where tips and strategies critical to the new teacher are discussed. We share the latest educational research and best practices so that the new teacher can be better equipped for a successful classroom experience. I'm your host, Steve Hiles, and today we will be talking about best classroom management strategies with our expert guest, Michael Linson. Before we get into today's topic, I want to ask you a question. Are you a brand new teacher that just graduated college? Would you be interested in having somebody with you every step of the way to guide and assist you as you transition into the classroom? Well, stay to the end of this episode and I will provide you with a link to learn how you can. Before we dive into today's topic, I would like to take this opportunity to share a little bit about our guest speaker, Michael Linson. Michael Linson founded Smart Classroom Management in 2009. He has taught every grade level from kindergarten through high school for the past 31 years and is the author of 6 best-selling books. He has teaching credentials in elementary education, English, drama and dance, and physical education, and an advanced degree in educational counseling. He is a frequent guest on podcasts and radio programs, advises school leaders and administrators, and works tirelessly to transform the American public education system. He lives in San Diego, California. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate you having me.
Great. It is really a pleasure to have you share your expertise with us today. So, Michael, would you take a moment to tell our listeners about your journey in the field of education?
Sure. Yeah. So I started teaching in, I believe, 1991. Loved it from the jump. Felt like immediately that it was what I was meant to do. Had a great experience right from the beginning, which I know now is pretty unusual, and still love it. 32 years later. But it took me a while. I had, like I said, a good experience right off the bat and was really enjoying it, but also focused on getting better. I've always been fascinated with classroom management and behavior, and so was really focused on those things and how I could make my classroom better, more effective, how to raise the bar of excellence in my classroom. And it wasn't until a few years later that I really noticed that my experience was unique, that there were a lot of teachers around me, a lot of teachers at my school that were really struggling, profoundly struggling and unhappy, stressed out, overworked, dealing with lots of misbehavior, disruptions, even some severe misbehavior. And so I started really thinking, what was I doing differently? I wanted to help. I thought that maybe I could help, but I first had to really take a deep dive into what I was doing and what was different than their experience, and why it was different. What was it? Was it something about me? And I've since learned that it really isn't. It's nothing about me in particular, but it is a set of principles and an approach that can make a huge difference. And so after really breaking things down, I thought that maybe I could do some writing. I've always enjoyed writing, and I had done some professional writing before 2009. But I just one day, pretty much on a whim, after really thinking about it, I started Smart Classroom Management and just started writing just with one article, and now 700 articles later, still doing it, still
That's
helping
great.
classroom management.
That is fantastic. Well, Michael, let me ask you this now. What do you consider would be the main goal of classroom management?
To give the teacher the freedom to teach and the students the freedom to learn and enjoy being in the classroom without interference, without being bothered, bullied, or interrupted.
Yeah, yeah, that's very important, especially, for the new teacher, coming straight from college, going into the classroom. It can be very, very challenging. And then if you were to speak to addressing misbehavior in the classroom, because I know that's a challenge. I mean, a challenge for many, many teachers.
Yeah, for sure. It is. It's a big challenge and absolutely the number one challenge I would say today. And so it's a huge question
Hmm.
that I've spent the past 14 years answering. And so it's not a simple answer, but I will say that it all begins with a classroom management plan, which is a set of rules and consequences that allow the teacher to lean on rather than trying to convince students to behave, rather than trying to pull them aside and counsel them and use their words to somehow motivate students to behave, which doesn't work and actually backfires in the long run.
Yeah, yeah, I see. And I guess this would kind of uh, tie in with managing a chaotic classroom. You got, I'm sure you've seen it too, or even heard it through the walls of your class. I mean, just a class that's totally out of control. And would you say it would start with a comprehensive management plan, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It would, if you're unable to get students' attention, if you're unable to speak and have students listen to you without talking over you, then you've lost control of the class,
Hmm.
and you absolutely have to restart from the beginning and teach and model the rules that protect learning in the classroom, and
Hmm.
then the consequences in case those rules are broken.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak to some practices to quiet down a very noisy class? I mean, what kind of strategies or tips can you tell that new teacher? This would work in 99 out of 100 times, and I know, obviously one strategy is not going to work 100%, I wouldn't think. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so these are the single strategies and the tricks won't work to quiet a noisy class. So those things, I should say, they may work initially for the first time or the first few times, and then
Hmm.
it's just going to go back to what it was before. um, Teachers need a complete cultural change, which is what we do at Smart Classroom Management. And so I said it begins with a classroom management plan, but it's a classroom management plan is critical, but it's a small part of classroom management. And so we have to make that plan meaningful and matter to students, which is a whole other topic that we can get into if you wish. So there are things you can do, absolutely, to avoid having a noisy class to begin with. But if it's noisy, there isn't a trick that's going to work.
Hmm. Because I know some teachers do the clap 3 times, or if you hear me clap 3 times, or they may say class, and the class says yes, yes. Kind of some kind of a thing there to kind of quiet them down a little bit. I know some teachers turn the lights on and off. I don't really
Yeah.
find that. I don't know. It might work once or twice. I just me personally, I don't find that works too well. But I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you don't mind me addressing that. And so you can have a signal, certainly. And at Smart Class Management, we prefer a simple, can I have your attention, please?
mhm.
But the signal means nothing if the students aren't taught specifically in a highly detailed way and modeled what is expected, and then practice that. And then what happens if they don't give you your attention? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where the magic is. It isn't in the signal itself. You can clap, you can use a train whistle or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But it's the teaching of it that makes it work.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I know new teachers, well as seasoned as well, sometimes find it hard to deal with disrespectful kids. And you know, what again, what strategy would you recommend or a tip when you have disrespectful students?
Well, one of the most powerful things you can do just for overall classroom management is to never take misbehavior personally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what we do at Smart Classroom Management is we recommend, and we have strategies for how to do this. But if you can be consistently pleasant
That's tough
from
at
opening
times, ain't it?
go, well, there are ways to do it that make it not so difficult. And
Uh-huh.
so all of our strategies free you up to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you rely solely on a classroom management plan to take care of misbehavior, you don't make it personal between you and the student. You don't create friction between you and the student. And so you see a lot less disrespect. But when you do see it, it's just a matter of following through.
Mm-hmm.
And so there isn't uh, a lecture, there isn't a admonishment or anything like that. It's just following your classroom management plan, and your consistent pleasantness and that joy of being in your class is what makes those rules and consequences so powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and far less likely to get disrespect. In fact, if smart classroom management classrooms, it's rare to ever get any disrespect.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, uh, Again, let me ask you this, Michael. How would you advise someone to organize a or structure their classroom for maximum effectiveness? How do you organize that classroom? I know that's we could probably talk for hours on that, but just a basically a short answer for that. What do you think?
Do you mean the physical organization?
Yeah, the actual or organize a classroom. Yeah, it could be physical. It could be, how you going to group these kids together. How you going to group the kids together. That kind of thing. Where are you going to put out your manipulatives. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the physical environment is really really important, and I think it's really very underappreciated. And so you want your environment as clear of clutter as possible. Any clutter and too many posters on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, uh, too many books. We recommend just having everything very, very clean and open. When a visitor comes into your classroom, they should be um, uh, stunned in some ways by what they see. It should really feel like it's a sacred place.
Uh-huh.
And so we keep it spotless, and clutter free. And this does several things. Number one, it communicates to students that when they come into your classroom, that excellence is expected rather than a chaotic environment. And then the other thing it does is that there are many studies that show that chaos in the environment
Mm-hmm.
uh, causes chaos in the mind. It makes it difficult to focus. And so we believe the physical environment should be very, very, uh, I like to say, Spartan like.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And as far as organization of the students, it can be anything. With good classroom management, you're free to have groups that work like they're supposed to. You're free to sit students wherever you wish them to sit. You don't have to separate
Mm-hmm.
students, and it will all still work.
Well, that's cool. Do you actually allow students to basically pick their own seats, for example? I mean, is this an acceptable practice with respect to smart classroom management, you know?
I don't think it's harmful necessarily, but I do think that the first day of school, in order to set the tone that the teacher is the leader of the classroom, that
Mm-hmm.
you do set up where the students are seated, and it can be random. If there are students that have IEPs, for example, that maybe need to sit near the front, you
Right.
certainly heed those that advice. But other than that, I think yes, you should. But as far as keeping certain students separated, that isn't that's classroom management by avoidance, and that isn't good for kids.
Okay. All right. And I have to ask you this, what ways, or how I should say, because I know the first day of school is extremely important. Matter of fact, the first 2 weeks is very critical to getting things under, going just like smooth, But
Mhm.
so how can a teacher build authentic? I notice in your book, you talk about authentic classroom community and not just for lack of a better word, fake community. You know what I mean? So how does that new teacher go in there, go into that classroom and start building? And I know it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen with a worksheet, find someone who knows whatever, whatever you're going to do. So how do we build this authentic classroom community you talk about?
Yeah, it's we sort of have a different way of looking at it. So we don't really believe in community circles and hash out kind of sessions and things like that, and kind notes and letters. And we really believe in focusing on academics. But as far as building a community, it really starts and ends with the teacher doing what they say they're going to do. So when students trust the teacher, and when that teacher is protecting their right to learn and enjoy being in the classroom, those
Hmm.
students are so appreciative of being there, so appreciative of being there. And when they know that there's a kindness and excellence is expected, then they're free to build relationships with each other without fear.
Hmm.
And then they also know that every day their teacher is going to be consistently pleasant. And so they know that it's going to be a good day, and they don't have to worry about the teacher's mood, or that the teacher is going to react to misbehavior by bringing tension in the classroom and creating animosity and all those sorts of things. So community happens natural in a well-run, effective classroom management type classroom.
Hmm. But then again, on the other hand, on that first day or even that first week, there's obviously you don't find anything wrong with activities that fosters students getting to know each other.
Yeah, I think a good getting to know you game is fine on the
Hmm.
first day of school.
Yeah.
But really that's about it. We're at school. We also just want to send the message that academics is what we're there for.
Yeah.
That's number one. And we mentioned this before. The purpose of classroom management is to have more time on task, more time doing academic work, and in a well-run classroom. I've found the difference between a classroom that has good classroom management, expert classroom management, and one that doesn't. If those students are going to be on task months ahead in a given year.
Hmm. All right. Now, what would you, well, let me ask you this. What types of strategies, okay, could a teacher use for, say, a student refuses to follow directions? You're given a direction to a kid and he just doesn't do it,
Yeah,
doesn't
so
respond. Yeah.
so a couple things, and I hope that I can respond simply enough. But there is a lot to this topic. But
Hmm.
usually, if a student refuses to follow direction, uh, they have it. There's a reason why. And typically, most often, it's because the teacher hasn't been consistent.
Okay.
And so they, in their minds, the student is thinking that there's a sense of unfairness there. Okay, so that's the number one reason. The second reason, if a student doesn't want to follow directions, is because there isn't clarity about what is expected ahead of time. And it also comes down to relationships. So I would say a third thing is that if there's resentment between the teacher and the student, that can be another reason. But it's generally those three reasons. But the number one is being inconsistent. So in other words, following through with a consequence with one student for one thing, but not another student, which is really, really common. Or saying they're going to do one thing and not doing it, and you just crush the trust you have between your students. And so a teacher has to be super, super disciplined in this particular area, and that should be a rarity. But usually something's going on, and it's the teacher, not the student.
Okay. All right. Michael, let me ask you this. What would you tell a new teacher about sending students to the principal's office?
If the behavior was a dangerous behavior, threatening, physically assaulting, things like that, you absolutely have to send that student. You have to involve administration to document that behavior, and to allow the principal or assistant principal to go through the protocols that they're required by the school district.
Absolutely.
Other than that, however, you should not. So under no circumstances for common misbehavior, even repeated common misbehavior, do you send a student to the principal. And the reason is because as soon as you do that, you communicate to that student and the rest of your class that the buck doesn't stop with you, that you're not the ultimate authority in your classroom, and that you can't handle it and need help. And that generally what happens is an increase in misbehavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. Now, this is something I definitely wanted to ask you here. What is your advice on putting student names on the whiteboard or chalkboard or whatever for rule violations? How do you feel about that?
I don't think it's a terrible thing to do. I don't think it's needed. I think that if a teacher does it because, let's say they're a new teacher and they want to make sure that they remember, what who's receiving a consequence. I really don't think it's terribly harmful to students. I recommend using a clipboard.
Okay.
I think that's better. And the other thing that's nice about having a clipboard and a sheet of paper and just having your roster on there is that you have every misbehavior documented. And so that's what we recommend. We also recommend a little piece of paper underneath that roster, which mentions the misbehavior. And there are several articles on the website, smartclassroommanagement.com, where teachers can refer to that particular strategy. So no, we don't necessarily recommend it, but I don't think it's if teachers are doing it, I don't think it's a terribly harmful thing.
Okay, this was a two-part thing I wanted to talk to you about. How do you feel then about having like a behavior chart? Some teachers have behavior chart with little pockets for each member of their class, with little strips of laminated strips with like green, yellow, red, blue, what have you. I mean, do you feel that that's okay? I mean, you don't think that's social shaming or anything? How do you feel about posting a behavior chart? Would you consider it the same thing as just putting a name on a whiteboard, or what? What's your take on that there?
Well, some of them are, they'll put the whole month up. And so you'll see like how students did for an entire month. And I think that is humiliating. I really do. I don't think that we should, have that up and parents coming in and that sort of thing. As far as behavior charts, we're not in favor of behavior charts because they usually can go up and down. So their behaviors can in other words, they can have a bad morning, but then they work to have a good afternoon, and there are lots and lots of problems with that. Very confusing to students. But if it's just similar to just a way for the teacher to make sure they know, or if there's a particular consequence, so it allows the student to look up and say, oh, I've got to stay in for recess today, I think that's fine, because as long as it's just for one day, every day should be a new day for students.
Right,
So every
right.
everything the teacher should be able to say, hey, let's have a great day today, and I believe in you, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay in that regard.
I see. Now, or you could have, you see nothing wrong with a chart listing the behaviors and maybe the consequences to them. Like maybe if this happens the first time, this is going to happen. Same repeated violation, the second time, this will happen. Um, Certainly that wouldn't be social shaming because you're not attaching it to any child, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
In fact, I
yeah.
think it's important to have that up in somewhere that everyone can see.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you, I have to ask you, what is your biggest takeaway that you would want our listeners, our new teachers, to know, Michael? What would that be? Or it might be more than one. I don't know.
Oh, just hang your hat on classroom management for sure. In the beginning, most especially, uh, because nothing is going to work as you want it to, or as it should, or as the teacher's guides say. It's not going to work if you don't have excellent classroom management from the beginning. And so, but on the other hand, if you focus just on that, your students are going to be on task so much more than your typical classroom, and you're going to do really well. You can't mess up the other stuff. So I would say that by far, that's the most important thing.
Okay. And where can folks go to learn more about you or to connect with you?
Smartclassroommanagement.com is where you can find all 700 articles. They're absolutely free. You can also find all of our books, and we've got guides, we've got classroom management plans there. There's also a tab at the top where you can find all of our videos. I do a video every week. And so you can check out all the information there, and there's a contact page also, contact page also. So if you want to email me, have any questions, or where to begin, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, outstanding. Okay, so that's smartclassroommanagement.com. Very good, very good. Michael, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
All righty, and I look forward to having you back again on the show. Have a great day, and Michael, we'll talk soon.
You too. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Remember, at the beginning of the show, I said if you'd like to supercharge your classroom management skills, I'd provide you with a link to learn more. Well, here it is. Simply go to tra.teacherclassroomresources.com. That's tra.teacherclassroomresources.com. And I want to thank you for listening to the Teacher Rockstar podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hiles. I hope that you will take the tips and strategies that Michael shared with you to heart and apply them to your classroom management. When you get a moment, visit my blog and subscribe to my newsletter for the latest educational research, best practices, and unadvertised free bonuses. Go to blog.teacherclassroomresources.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us at the Teacher Rockstar podcast. And if you'd like to support us, please feel free to share our podcast with others, post about it on social media, and if you feel comfortable doing so, leave a rating and review. That would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again. We'll see you same time, same place next week. And remember, my friend, you got this.